Here's the second part of the conversation with Dimitry Vishnevetsky.
I started in Duluth, Minnesota, which is a camp. I came in there, and actually my parents came up there with me, and I remember it said I needed to report at like 12 o'clock to the prison, and I showed up there at like about 11. We were early. I was smoking a cigarette outside, and one of the cars or something rolled up and was like, "Well, you can't be here. You can't. What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm actually supposed to, report to prison here today." And he's like, "Oh, okay. Well, are you ready?" And I go, "No, I'm not ready. I'm not ready." I was like, I'm not supposed to be here till 12. I still got an hour. He asked us to walk across the street, and we did, and then we said our goodbyes, and then I started walking towards the prison. Yeah, my mother was in tears, and I kept walking. I didn't look back. It was terrible. It was painful for her, and painful for me and for everyone. It was embarking on something that complete insanity. How did we end up here? And all the reflections and all the regrets and all the introspectives that you could make, and replaying every single. That's what you do, right? I mean, I don't know. Well, I don't know if that's what you do, but that's what I do. Replay every single moment of every single day of every single play, and how it could only have been like this. And you imagine that it was like that. There were so many different scenarios and situations where had I gone left instead of gone right, or had I gone right when I should have gone left, where we wouldn't be having a conversation about prison. We'd be having a conversation about a Nobel Prize, or sitting in sitting on the boat in Capri. And but it didn't work out that way. I guess it's all part of the journey, and it's all part of the story. So yeah, I walked into prison, and they strip search you and take inventory of whatever it is, and then they gave me my issue of linen and whatever else, a pillow, and then they walked me to my cell, which the camp isn't like a real cell because there's no like bars, or the door doesn't close, anything like that. But there's like 4 guys, 2 different bunk beds. So there's 4 people to a room. I remember the guy's name who I was with. It was a black guy by the name of Schmitty. I think he'd been down for 11 or 12 years. And this wasn't his first bid either. And a bid is what they referred to as a sentence, that's what they call it, or a bit in prison. He might have said he might have had 3 teeth. He said a couple things to told me the top bunk was mine. And he helped me make the bed because I didn't even know how to make the bed, the way they do the bed. There's this like liquid spray that you like, this blue stuff that's like, I guess, a disinfectant or some kind of spray. So I'm thinking like I'm spraying everything down, and I'm doing all of this because I was like, this is terrible. This can't be sanitary at all. So I'm breaking everything down, and I'm spraying everything down. And you each get like assigned your own like plastic chair, which that's your chair to sit in, either in the room, or you can take that into like the TV room or somewhere else, and that's your chair. And I remember the next day, one of my roommates was Puerto Rican, and this other Puerto Rican who was like 6'8" walks into the room, and he sits down in my chair, and then he gets up, and I spray down the chair, not thinking anything of it really. And I almost got into a fight with this guy. This guy pushed me into a locker and whatever. And and then I'm like, "What's going on?" Kind of, and like the other Puerto Rican's like, he's like, "No, he doesn't know any better. He just got here." Because the other Puerto Rican was pissed off. He's like, "What, does this guy think I'm dirty? Like, what, he needs to clean up after me? Like, what the fuck's wrong with this guy?" And so it was like a big insult, right? Because like I didn't even think about it, but like I'm spraying the chair down after him, and I'm just, I got this in my mind, like everything is dirty and everything is like that. And he took it personally, which, in retrospect, I can see how that can happen.
So you were in the camp in Duluth for how long?
2 years.
Why were you transferred out of there?
I was transferred out of there for multitude of disciplinary infractions. To say the least, I didn't take well to authority. I didn't take well to any of the system. Right away, they don't like anybody to do anything that's productive or anything else. So right away, I started to occupy myself with writing and doing stuff and writing my books and writing my stories. And they didn't like that at all. I think they have animosity towards people who had successes, who had money, financial, you know what I'm saying? They take personal animosity towards that as opposed to the average drug dealer or whatever else. There's a lot of jealousy associated with them.
Prison guards and the prison admin.
The prison guards, the prison admin, the inmates too. You know, everyone's very jealous there. You know, because it's a micro society within a society, right? So just like in our society, people in prison have more resources than others, and some people have nothing. But it's much more magnified in prison because you can't hide. You're really exposed because you can't hide, right? In society, we can hide. You really are exposed as an individual, and you're exposed in your characteristics and everything else. So you really know the true mark of an individual when you are with them 24/7, as opposed to even knowing somebody for maybe 10 years in the real world, and you see them for an hour or two, because everyone can put on their happy face, their smile, their whatever illusion that they want to show for those, and then retreat back to their home, and you don't know how they treat their wife or their kids or anything else, really, because you're not privy to that type of information. You just see what you see when they're out, right? In prison, I always say that a person is completely exposed. You know, you really get to see the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between. Yeah, it's a really interesting environment. You know, you really see what people are made of, and I never knew what people are capable of. And, you know, they'll tell on you for anything. How that makes sense, it doesn't make sense to me, but I guess there's some kind of satisfaction that people derive from that. You know, yeah, right away I had issues immediately, and they'd always harass me, search me, give me disciplinary infractions, minor ones for nothing. They were targeting me. Possibly, you know, part of it had to do with me being Jewish. I'm in bumblefuck Duluth. I mean, how many Jews have they ever seen? You know, so maybe they have that stereotypical, oh, this guy's a Jewish financier, stole a ton of money. Resentment, a lot of things, you know, and that's before I ever even really did anything. I guess I was a little bit different than the grain. I didn't sit there and play poker all day or do it, you know, just lay down like everyone else and pretend I'm dead. I tried to use the computer lab. I went to great lengths to sign up for courses so I could use the computer lab and write some of my thoughts down. And anything that when somebody has, you know, in those types of brain dead environments, you know, I think they saw me as a threat. Like, oh, this guy can actually write. This guy can help other people write motions. This guy could help, you know, consult people. It was a big deal from the beginning. One thing led to another. Eventually, you know, I started to just say, okay, I'm in prison and I've got no contact with the real world, and so let me make the best of it. You know, it's a camp. There's some fences, but there's areas that aren't fenced, and it's not like barbed wire fence. It's like the kind of fence you would put in your yard. You know what I mean? Just a little bit higher. You know, and we started to get, you know, contraband in, like cell phones and things of that nature. You know, Johnny Walker Black Label and cigarettes and you name it. Good food from the grocery store, food from restaurants. So we were living it. You know, we were doing the best of it. Didn't like that. I got caught up with a bunch of that stuff. In fact, in the end, the straw that broke the camel's back was there was you know, a guy that was a prison friend of mine who was going to another institution, to another camp, and they gave him a furlough. So that means he could actually take the bus there himself and go to this other camp. So we had gotten a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue Label, and we had been drinking the previous night. And I had a bunch of cell phones and vodka and different like rotisserie chickens. And one of my degenerate cellmates who I used to let use the phone and used to drink with us and all this stuff. But for some reason that night, he, you know, I got into an argument with him, and, you know, he made a big deal out of whatever. And he told on me, called the prison guards. And then they came at 6 o'clock in the morning. 3 guards came at 6 o'clock in the morning to do a random breathalyzer. And of course they were looking for me. And I was like, a random breathalyzer? Why are you guys 3 deep on a random breathalyzer when I live with, like, one of the guys is like a 72-year-old man. The other one is, random my ass, 6 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, when they came, they found my cell phone. They found some liquor. They found I was drunk still from the previous nights. And then they put me in the SHU, which is the special housing unit, which also is referred to as the hole. It's like solitary or disciplinary confinement. They finally, it was kind of like they had caught the big whale. They couldn't have been more delighted. They had got me on a lot of minor infractions and a lot of nonsense, and almost called me with the phone a couple of times. Everybody was like, couldn't believe that all the guards still couldn't believe that they hadn't shipped me yet, because I had all these little minor infractions, but they never really got me with anything big, you know what I mean? But I was constantly in trouble. They were constantly calling me to the lieutenant's office. It got to the point where the lieutenant would come to my room to hand me the disciplinary report. They wouldn't even call me down there. So they finally got me with they finally got the Vish with the goods.
So how long did you spend in SHU?
That time I spent about 2 weeks. Prior to that, I had spent 3 weeks in the SHU under investigation for no infraction, because they said somebody dropped a note on me saying that I was going to incite a riot and that I was going to do this and that and blah, 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 and all of this. And I go, listen, I'm the writer. I write the story. This is better than the shit I make up. Are you kidding me? Kidding me? Incite a riot, launching missiles. I mean, what next? I mean, what do you guys,
wow,
threatening this, threatening that? I go, come on, are you guys kidding me? Like, look, this is insane.
In the camp or in the prison, there's no recourse or appeal you can make. This is just it. You're there, judge. Jury.
Oh yeah, of course. There's a kangaroo court called DHO, which is a disciplinary hearing officer. They pretend like there's some rights, and then there's an administrative remedy where you can write to deaf ears. I mean, it's all structured like there's a system of recourse, but there's no recourse.
After you were in solitary the second time for being drunk, then you got transferred to...
Yeah, then I got transferred to Sandstone, which is a low, so it's a higher security level, where there's actually barbed wire fences, and instead of living in like a 4-person room with really, in our Duluth, where we were at the prison, there's an Air Force base right there. So there's airplanes taking off all the time, all day. And I mean, the airport's right across the street, the liquor store across the street right there. And we can't get to it, but I mean, it's like literally right out my window. So we were living in like former Army barracks. I went from that to an actual, like, more like barbed wire fences. And now I'm living in like an airport terminal where it's like, 100 guys or whatever there were, 150 guys all in one room with bunk beds. That was Sandstone. And in Sandstone, I was there for 60 days before I went to go see this kangaroo court. It's, the DHO, which is a disciplinary hearing officer for my infractions at Duluth. And at Duluth, no matter what the infractions were, because I guess it was a camp or whatever the case may be, other than whatever your sanctions were, you never spent time in the SHU for your infractions. That was never part of the penalty. So after the guy, this just terrible, these DHO guys are just, degenerate human beings that hate life. And now they've got one little iota of power. He thinks he's like a real judge or something. So anyway, he sentenced me to 60 days DS, which is disciplinary segregation. So I go right from this hearing in handcuffs to a jail inside a jail. And I spent 60 days in like, this was summertime, because it was May 28th, I remember, that I went in there. So I spent June and July, 60 days, 30 days by myself, 24 hours or 23 hours. It's 23 and 1. So 23 hours in a cell, and 1 hour you get to leave the cell, leave the cell and go outside. Yeah, so I spent 60 days there. And when I got out, I ended up getting into a fight. 3 weeks later, I ended up spending 6 months in the SHU. 6 months of just torture in the shoe. They just drug me and drug me and drug me and fabricated infractions and then give me DS time. And then after 6 months, they shipped me to another institution in Michigan, Milan, Michigan.
What does that mean?
And
What do you mean, drug me?
drug me meaning like, an investigation. Then after the investigation, they'd issue a incident report. Then you'd go back to the kangaroo courts, or you have to be seen by the kangaroo court. And then the kangaroo court, like, it might be 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So you still have to be in the shoe. And then, the guy can't make it this week, so it's another week. And then after you see the kangaroo court guy, he goes, oh yeah, well, part of your punishment is another 27 days or 30 days in the shoe. So now I was stuck in the shoe again.
Always on you, always on your case.
Yeah, exactly. Back to the investigation. What are we investigating? And there's no investigation. It's a drag. They come in, like, the warden walks through and the whole goofy crew walks through and asks, are you okay? How you doing? Everything. They don't give a fuck how you're doing. So yeah, that was 6 months of that until they finally shipped me to Milan, Michigan. And this time I got a ride on Con Air. I had never been on Con Air before, so they gave me a ride on the real deal Con Air, because when they ship you on a bus. You get on with ankle bracelets and the handcuffs and the whole chains like you see in the movies. Mm-hmm. And they really do that. And then they put you on a bus and they give you a bologna sandwich. And then you ride down to, that's actually was my first trip to Oxford, because the route is you go to Sandstone and then you go to Oxford for the day, spend the night at Oxford. And then from Oxford, you go to Terre Haute, Indiana. And in Terre Haute, Indiana, you more shoe time, do like another, I think I did about a month in the shoe. Actually, that's when I went to the real penitentiary. I spent the month in the penitentiary. So I've been to all security levels, the real pen, because they were doing some kind of remodeling on the shoe. So they took us to the penitentiary. And I spent a month in the penitentiary in 24-hour confinement in the cell. And then finally I got my ride on Con Air that took me to Milan, Michigan. And
Con Air is an airplane for convicts?
Con Air is an airplane for convicts. It's,
okay.
Supposedly it's airplanes that they confiscate from major, drug dealers or, maybe billionaires. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like confiscated stuff.
So in your time, I'm curious about your time in solitary. How did you get through that? Did you learn to meditate, or did they let you read, or... Oh yeah, they let you read. You have to be a very strong individual, or an individual who just doesn't give a shit about anything, to make it through those types of times. I mean, for me, it was terrible. You read a lot. Hopefully you can get somebody who's a decent cellmate. So you tell some stories. You do this. You make cards. Out of nutty bar boxes, which are like, you know what a nutty bar is? No, don't.
A nutty bar is like, I don't know, one of those, like, I guess it's like a big Twix, like a waffle chocolate things that they'll let you order that from like commissary. You make you get out of milk cartons, you can make cards, dominoes out of soap. It's insane. And you hear people yelling and screaming and it's just, there's no peace. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you gotta read, maybe even work out in there, even though it's the size of a toilet. You do some push-ups, you learn to do some different exercises. Mm-hmm. And then you replay every single waking moment of your life. How did I get here? Every single play, every single action, every single person who wronged you, every single person who righted you, every single everything.
Your fellow prisoners, for the most part, were drug dealers, institutionalized, just in and out of prison all the time kind of prisoners?
Yeah, I mean, you got, for the most part, you got people who were drug dealers. Once in a while, I encountered some murderers. There's a lot of Native Americans that go to prison because anything that happens, if you get indicted on a federal reservation, it's all federal crime. So it actually could be something as simple as like battery, and they're in federal prison.
You wrote a piece called The Warehousing of America, talking about who's in prison, why they're in prison, the disparity between, you even mentioned, I think, that there are some, low level, I'd call them low level drug dealers who are getting sentenced to longer time than even some murderers, or at least people convicted of manslaughter maybe, but just an inordinate amount of people that I think were just born in the wrong place at the wrong time, in the wrong circumstances, ending up in prison because really, I mean, you can say everybody's responsible and everybody makes their own decisions and pays consequences, and that's a good way to go about living. But you can also say there's people that are truly born in circumstances that
no question. I agree. I mean, there's some people that you really, the fact of the matter is, yeah, we all have choices and we all can make decisions, but you're absolutely right.
And the point of your piece is we're not doing anything to rehabilitate, educate, or lift these people up. I mean, there was a recent Reform Act for federal prisons co-sponsored with Van Jones and Jared Kushner, of all people, which really is going to help the federal prison population in that they're looking at that disparity of sentencing when it comes to, for example, a white person who got caught with some cocaine as opposed to a black person who sold a joint on the street.
Prison is a place which extinguishes all hope and perpetuates cycles of failure. That's a very important quote that I guess, someone like Kushner doesn't understand, but he understands more than most because his father spent time in prison.
And what do you think is at the bottom of, I mean, you've been there, you've been at that bottom of hope, you've been in that place. What did you get a sense of what's driving that? Why are we treating each other like that? I mean, in the end, we're human beings. Even the prison guards, they're human beings. They're doing a job they probably don't really enjoy, although some of them might derive some kind of sadistic.
Yeah, they do derive some sadistic pleasure on it, and that comes from the prosecutors to the judges to everybody. Listen, it's like my friend says, being a police officer is not a job. It's a state of being. It's a mentality. No normal human being would want to sign up for that type of a gig. So it's like you're born with this innate thing that either, like you said, it's a sadistic thing, it's a power trip, it's I want to really help people, but very, very few of them, and I'm not going to sit here and say anything is an ultimatum where it's 100%, but the majority, no. The majority, no. They derive, yeah, you're right. They are miserable people, and misery loves company. When they see somebody that's outside the norm of what they're accustomed to, and when people are ignorant and they feel inadequate, there's only one way for them to lash out, and that's with anger and with doing something. Because every single conversation I've ever had with a person in prison, in terms of administration, where I actually formulate an argument, talk logical, and win the argument, the only answer that I have ever gotten from them is get out or end up in the shoe. They can't combat me, so they can only do what they know how to do, which is some kind of consequence or repercussion. They lost. It's kind of like they lost, and their outlash is to, just take them away type thing, execute them.
Now that you've seen the pre, the during, and the post side of that system, let's say you were the judge and brought before you was someone who was found to be selling marijuana, was making a living doing it, wasn't a kingpin, but wasn't some poor schlup either, was making a living doing this, What would be your sentence? You have carte blanche to, give this person some kind of sentence. What would you do?
My sentence would be to a real work camp. A real work camp where somebody actually has to, in fact, I just saw a documentary about it the other day about how they have true centers in Brazil, prisons, where every single day people wake up like they're going to school and they have classes which teach morality and ethics. They have classes where you have to have a hobby, you have to have a job, you have to actually learn a viable skill, you have to read X, Y, and Z book. The only time they go into their cell is to sleep. In the United States prison, you don't have to really, in federal prison, you're supposed to have a job, but it's all fabricated. People sit around and watch TV all day and play cards and gamble and work out. There is no viable skill being taught. Yeah, there's some people that, had some skills prior to being incarcerated, like a plumber or an electrician or something like that. Maybe a couple people, they work in those capacities where they do stuff. Other than that, and they used to have Unicore. They make mattresses and bed springs and file cabinets and all kinds of stuff. It used to be, and they sell those products, in the real world too. But those are being shut down more and more. I sentence them not to time. I sentence them to some type of, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, and you'll feed him for his life.
Yeah.
And it's not just an adage, it's a principle. So, you said, circumstances, decisions. Yes, at the end of the day, we all have circumstances and decisions. But here's the bottom line, and it's the facts. It's true. If I'm one of 9 kids and my mom's a crack addict and my dad left and we don't have shit, and the guy in the corner is making hundreds of thousands of dollars selling rocks or whatever, I'm just, here's the stereotype, and I've got nothing and nobody can eat and I've got no skills. What else am I going to do?
Right. Exactly.
It's not a decision really. It's, I got nobody and nothing. And this is the quickest way, as they would say, to come up. It's 9 kids fending for themselves and whatever.
Yeah.
And if you can kind of get out there, because if there's a gang or a group or whatever takes you in, that becomes your family, because they're actually taking care of you a little bit. They're giving you some guidance that you don't know at a young age. These guys have kids when they're 15. These guys at my age at 40 have grandkids.
Yeah.
Because their kids have repeated the cycle. They're having kids when they got 9 baby mamas and 9 kids, and they don't know any of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm wondering what you think about just legalizing drugs.
People think that it can't work on a large scale, in a big country, because it worked great in Portugal, right? There's already been an experiment in Portugal where they legalized it.
Huge success story of that in Portugal.
It's a huge epidemic, huge problem in Portugal, to almost where it's not a big deal at all, and very few people even engage in those activities. It's not as interesting anymore because it's like just available all the time. So can we stop the addict from being an addict? No. Can't stop the alcoholic from being an alcoholic, can you? But when it's accessible, when it's taxable, when it's regulated, when it's this, just like any drug, right? If the FDA knew exactly how much the dosage of heroin was, well, then we probably have less overdoses. You still can't stop the guy from buying 10 of them, but it's not going to be a bad hit or this. You've got taxation, you've got money, you've got this. Why not give people the choices? Because you're ultimately saying that people are not capable of making the choices. Now, I suppose, if you want to make laws to protect society in some ways, then you have the same laws as you have with alcohol. You set a limit. You can't drive while high. You can't drive while on heroin. You can't operate machinery while on cocaine, or whatever. So we could, I suppose, implement some kind of laws for the safety of everything.
Some boundaries for safety. Yes.
Yeah, we could have some boundaries for safety. I think the people who wanted to do it would do it, and the people who didn't want to do it. Accessibility it's a joke. Listen, who can't get cocaine or heroin or weed?
Yeah.
Everybody can. It's not like we're stopping them. Listen, every high school kid or everybody knows somebody. It's so easy. You know what I'm saying? In fact, it's easier to get it then than it is now. As an adult, once you're out of the circle, you're not out of it. I'd have to ask somebody, like, where do I get it? I don't know where to get it. I suppose it's easy enough if I wanted to. I could probably go to a club and ask anyone and everyone, but then it's weird. I wouldn't go up to everyone and just ask.
Yeah.
So it's hard. So it's like if you don't know, it's harder. But then again, if I was in the loop, it would be pretty easy. And I'm sure I could still call somebody up pretty easily and be like, "Hey, John, what do you know where to get this?" And somebody would point me in the right direction.
Well, it does seem that in those countries where certain drugs are legalized, there's a lot less problems with the things that are associated with drug use in this country. But at least now, marijuana is starting to become legal in most states and probably soon federally.
Probably, but we've been saying that for 20 years. So
we have. But
so maybe in another 20 years. I mean,
yeah, maybe at least.
I mean, what a brain fuck again, where you've got marijuana damn near illegal in every state, but nonetheless you can still be put in prison by the federal government because it's illegal.
Exactly.
You've got a real true industry, a very organized industry in most states. Colorado, Washington, Oregon, California, where these guys sell these things like in tuna fish packages and really cool packaging, and everybody's vaping, and then there's like healthy ways to do it. And I mean, it blows my mind to even like some of the stuff I've seen from friends who, I'm like, that's how people do it now. Holy, I can't even believe it.
I know.
And then they'll be like, oh, here, check out this website. I go, what? There's a website for this?
Yeah.
And you can do this and edibles and chocolate.
Oh yeah. And the little candies and stuff. Yeah.
And I mean, it's everything and anything. And I mean, listen, major players have gotten in. Molson is a major investor.
Oh yeah.
Cannabis market now. I think I read that the Wrigley company and the Wrigley family is a major investor in cannabis. So there's major players, major corporations who are investing in cannabis in Canada right now. It's, I guess, what is it? I don't know. It's the United States with its, Puritan beliefs. It's, it's terrible. It's really terrible. I mean,
it is. It's just so backwards. It's medieval.
And the system is very medieval. It's like the stuff that prison is predicated on in the United States is like some fascist Nazi stuff. That's what the Nazis would do. Like, I mean, strip you down. Everything's a strip you down. I mean, what is it? It's sadistic. What do you need to strip me down for every time? I mean, to degrade you, it's to lose your humanity.
We are a war culture, and when we see a problem, go to war. There's something going on in threatening our economy in some other country, go to war. We war against other countries and we war against our own people. The answer to everything seems to be, start a war. I'm so sick of the war on this and the war on that. And then when I hear about your story, you did something wrong. But in the end, really what you did had to do with money and people who were just fine losing a couple thousand, couple million, whatever. Was it really appropriate for you to spend 5+ years of your life in that condition of inhumanity? No, not appropriate at all. And I would say for 99%, I mean, I'm just, making this up, let's say it's 97% of the people in prison, there's no way they deserve, even if they did the crime and should be put away somewhere for the safety of society, they have to be treated that way. Human beings treating other human beings that way. It's just unbelievable.
And a lot of, there's a lot of terrible people there too. But the question once again begs: are they terrible because they're terrible, or are they terrible because they've been made terrible?
Yeah.
A lot of these guys, it's not, like I said, it's not their first stint in prison. Their parents basically have abandoned them since a very young age. They've been on the streets, and they've been going to juvenile facilities since they've been 14, 15 years old, which in some ways people have told me are even worse than real prison because they really treat the kids terrible. So you get hardened like that. You don't even know how to act normally with people because the only thing you know is how to, really get over on them. It's almost like you've been taught that you got to kind of get one up on them or steal, or everyone's trying to fuck you, that you have to fuck them first. Either you fuck me or I fuck you. And that's how they approach it. And it's true. They've been around people like that their whole life. So of course, how could a normal human being be not out to fuck you? You know what I'm saying? It's like that's what they say. It's just get over on you.
Yeah.
That's what they're always trying to do. It's everything's a scam, everything's a cheat, everything's a whatever.
Imagine, as Charles Eisenstein says, what it's like to be you. Judges imagine that about convicts. Police imagine that about civilians. Wall Street people imagine that about farmers. You know, we all wonder and ask, what's it like to be you, and come from there, as opposed to I'm right and you're wrong, or I'm in this position of executing authority and enforcing the rules, and you're the victim here. Just ask the question, what's it like to be you, and really start coming from that point of view, as opposed to this sort of right-wrong mentality onto which the whole justice and prison system is built.
You know, it's like the movie Trading Places, right? When they turned a guy with a perfect pedigree into a criminal, and they turned a criminal into a upstanding citizen.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of it has to do with the nature of the environment. If your father was a brilliant professor and your mother was a brilliant scientist, then you've got good genes. You're going to be a smart guy. You know, that's a big portion of stuff is where you come from, your upbringing, how your parents were, and everything else. When you have all of those negatives going against you, then of course it's a greater obstacle to achieve something. We always marvel at the feat.
When it comes to criminal justice system and even Wall Street and some of the shenanigans that go on with transfer of wealth in this country, and even going up to environmental issues, I just say more love and compassion and less retribution and self-righteousness is what's called for. And love to see I don't want to see the justice system reformed. I want to see it dismantled entirely, and then have us really rebuild a culture that concerns itself with people first.
All in this together. We're all in this together. All in this together.
I mean, the day I was released, yeah, it was almost like it's surreal. You don't even think it's going to happen. One moment you're in prison and you've done all this time, and then the next day you're a free human being. You're free. You're outside of the structure of what you've known, the monotony, the routine, the brain dead pace, the nonsensical, nothing matters, to, oh wow, you know, the grass is a little greener, the sun's a little brighter, your ankle doesn't hurt as much, everything, everything, like instantaneously, everything tastes different, which it does. That's a reality, because it does taste different.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it is. It's a big deal. But you're not free. You know, even when you're released, you're not free. You've done all your time, and you're not free, because now I got to go to the halfway house, and the halfway house is another, like, you know, nonsensical bullshit step where I'm in a halfway house where they're still dictating a curfew and what time I can come home and what I can do and what I can bring in. And you got to do 3.5 months of, well, depending on what they give you. They gave me 3.5 months, and now I'm free. And, you know, I'm somebody who didn't need a halfway house. I don't need to readjust the society. I don't need to do any of that stuff. I'm lucky enough to have, you know, a good support network and some economic viability where I could have been better off hitting the ground running, you know, and doing stuff and being more productive. But it's more, really, it's part of your sentence. It's part of your time. It's part of, you know, people examining you again, and you pissing in a cup every 5 days. You know, it's senseless. You know, it's useless. To what? To catch you so they can put you back in prison? I mean, and there's guys that go back because they just can't. That's what, you know, they you know, this wasn't a one-off. This is what they do. You know, so it was a process. It's like I'm free. I get to go out to work during the day, but then I still got to go to this halfway house with the same people that I just spent the last 5 years with for another 3.5 months. So it's prolonging my freedom again. And it's just another ridiculous step. And of course, the people there talk to you any way they want to as well, for the most part. And you got to beg for everything and make everything happen. And it's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's like, when is enough enough? And then really after that, after you're free again, you're still not free because there's probation.
Mm-hmm.
So you've done all this time and now you're on probation.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, you're free, but you're not free because, you know, you got to report to this probation officer every couple of months, which is not a big deal, but it is a big deal because someone's looking after you. You know, you might have to fill out a monthly report. Again, not a big deal, but it is. You know, I want to get on a plane and go to New York or LA. I got to ask them. So once again, I'm not free. Freedom is doing what you want, when you want, with whom you want, whenever you want. And I'm not free. And I've done all this time. So it's like, how much of life do you want from me? Another 2 years of probation, or a year if I'm lucky? I mean, you know, yes, I'm here in the real world. Yes, I can go where I want and, you know, have a drink and do this, but you know, you're not really free. I can't get on a plane and go to Singapore without asking permission. You know, if they even let me do it. So when, you know, you did your time, you pay for whatever the crime, and you're still not free. So when is this free? I mean, the guy who wants to commit another crime, or the guy who wants to do whatever he wants to do, is going to do it whether you are on probation or not. So what are you stopping me from? You're just stopping me from living.
All in this together. We're all in this together. All in this together.
You know, we're working on a lot of projects. I mean, obviously, we've touched upon several pieces of my life, segments. There's a lot of stories encapsulated in what I've done, how we got here. And what I've put together is Vish Media, which is now a production company of content. And I am a writer, creator, a producer. So I've written, created a children's series called The Adventures of Frankie Fox, which the first book has just been launched, called Journey to the Dominican Republic. That is on Amazon, and you can visit us at www.frankiefox.com. More books in the series: The Great Race, Beneath the Sea, Space Odyssey are coming. We've got animations coming. We've got some very cool learning tools and some apps that are coming. What we've talked about here, you know, is my life, but that's been encapsulated in a book called, in a series as well, called The Rothman Files. The first book in that series is going to be From Oxford to Oxford. And that's going to be a story based on reality, nonetheless fictionalized, as all of the best stories are, to protect some of the identities and the people involved. So if you liked what you heard today, then I think that the text and some of the stories, love, crime, passion, perseverance, redemption, it's all there, all the makings of a great story. We got the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You can get more in depth into that in the Rothman Files From Oxford to Oxford. And then we've got some more content with actually a series and some other stuff that I'm going to write about, the Prison Diaries, which is real life stories that occurred, kind of like a Taxi Cab Confessions, but real. And then we've got Challenge What You Know, which is insight from me, Mr. Vish, about some of the trials, tribulations, thoughts, and insights that I've surmounted, or I guess put together through life, and my perspective on things and how I view things. And it's kind of a book of do as I say, not as I did, and a book that analyzes conventional wisdom and delves deep into the inner workings of the human mind and what our true meaning is, and how we can achieve those things, and I guess like a little pocket guidebook on life, a little handbook that somebody can reference to and say, oh, that's interesting, I can relate, that's interesting, how would I analyze this and apply this into my scenario in life. All of these products are available. We've got the Real Mr. Vish website. You can visit us there, MrVishMedia.com. You can visit us there. You can follow us on Instagram, the official Frankie Fox, and you can follow us on Facebook, Frankie Fox.
I'll put all those links into my show notes, and when I publish our conversation, I wanted to say I read the Rothman files and the prison diaries, the rough cuts of it, and it's just a riveting story. A lot about what we talked about today, but some also just fascinating details of, not just prison life, but the whole Wall Street adventure, and your story on what happened on September 11, 2001 is just amazing. And that's in there too. And I just want to acknowledge you, Dimitry, for bringing your spirit and your indomitable spirit to life. You've been through a lot more than many of us would ever care to have even dabbled in, but you've been in the thick of the crap of it. You've seen it really from both sides. I mean, the height of the boom and bust and all that, and also serving time in probably one of the most oppressive institutions on this planet. It's probably not as bad as a Singapore jail, but it's pretty damn bad. And
it's pretty bad.
And you've come through, I wouldn't say unscathed, but the scathing has not tarnished your spirit. And I really want to acknowledge you for being as life-loving and wanting to give back to this world that you are. I really appreciate how you are with all of this.
Well, they say you can be better or you can become better. So I've taken the other route. So we've got to, life is nothing more than a compilation of stories. So make your story as good as it can be. And that story can even touch one person. It's a story that needs to be shared. And if it's a story that can actually touch a great deal of people, then it's a story that has to be told.
We are all in this together. All in this together. We're all in this together. All in this together. All in this. All in this together. All in this. Yeah, we're all in this together. Rhythm of life.
Here's the second part of the conversation with Dimitry Vishnevetsky.